I don't see anybody missing. You would notice in your lab team, I imagine, so.
On special recording time.
Yeah. They don't care. I will show you though, as we can just kind of look through these real quick while we're settling in. So that's Alstroemeria pollen grains. You probably saw something like that when you made your slide. And then worker bee legs. Actually going to be a warmer day today. So worker bee legs up close. You can see kind of how that might be helpful, these little hairs. That's an anther of a lily. And you can see all of the little pollen grains that would be up in the anther. The stem. It's a pine stem. It's a little different. Oop. Go back. Here's a root tip from a zea, but you can see right here how the cells kind of change. This would be the cap on the root tip that helps push it through the dirt. There's leaves. Onion skin. You love onions? Okay, I saw a very strange video. So has anybody seen the movie Nonas? It's great. It's really great. So we watched it the other night, but basically the premise is this guy is opening a restaurant because he wants the food he grew up with. So he hires a bunch of Italian grandmas to come cook in the kitchen. That's the idea, right? And it's funny because one of them's from Bologna and the other's from Sicily, and they keep fighting. And anyway, one of them makes a capuzzel, which is like a baked sheep's head. It's like peasant food that became kind of like now it's something they eat on holidays, sort of a deal, because it's a cultural thing. But anyway, I got looking up cooked sheep's head because I don't know why, but I found a YouTube video of a guy, and it's not Italian cooked sheep's head, it's Asian of some kind, but he had a whole sheep's head. Okay, that's why you said because you like onion. He had a whole sheep's head and a red onion. Okay, and the sheep's head was covered in like it looked like a hot sauce of some kind or a sweet and sour sauce. And he had no utensils and he used only his hands. And he ate every bit of that sheep's head. He ate eyeballs, he ate brains, but he kept biting the red onion like an apple in between. I know. You seen this? I have no idea. They didn't say. It might have been, but it was wild to watch him. Like he pulled every bit of like he wasn't like, ooh, connective tissue, I don't want that. He ate the everything but bone. It was wild. He actually sucked on the mandible at one point. I was like, dude, this is kind of gross. There's teeth in that, it was very weird. But the biting of the red onion like an apple, and then he would just keep going. It was impressive. It was very impressive. I was like, daggone, man. All right. So as I was telling you, your stuff. Oh, Jordan. Oh, there you are. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. You're usually on the other side of the table. I was like, did I miss Jordan all day? No, you're just very quiet today. All right, you're here. All right. So, okay. Your stuff for finals is in your resources folder. I finished that this week. I still have to make a sink or swim is the plan. But your Jeopardy is obviously available to you. And like I said before, double, triple check, look at your syllabus, see what lab is coming, open up your assignment and bring in whatever it is you need, okay? Because you may need some stuff. Everybody should have colored pencils in your binders because I gave them to you, but if you need to print something, be sure you've printed it. And if you need tape or whatever, I've got scissors, but if you need tape or whatever, bring it. Okay, so today is our last bit of Unit 6, and today we're talking about plant reproduction and plant response. And plant response is actually, I think, pretty fascinating. Stuff we see every day that maybe we don't even think about, like you're walking through the woods and you notice a vine has wrapped around a tree. How does that happen? So it's that sort of thing. Or when people tell you if you want your banana to ripen faster, put it in a paper bag or put it next to another banana. There are reasons for that. And it's pretty interesting. So this was your homework. Most of you did pretty well. Those were your answers. And most of you guys did fine with that. Yes.
Wait, so you could use outside resources.
Of course. It's homework. It's not a test. Yeah, it's homework. So you absolutely can use outside resources. Tests, not so much, but homework, yeah. Okay. So let's talk about reproduction in flowering plants. Does anybody know what kind of flower that is? Anybody recognize it? Do you know? No hydrangea. Good guess. That's a peony. I love them. They're so pretty. So yes, that's a peony. Flowers are the reproductive organs, and they're composed of 4 different kinds of specialized leaves, which would be what? Do we know? It's going to be things like sepals, petals, stamens, and carpels. They're considering these types of specialized leaves. Seems a little counterintuitive maybe, but. And then sepals and petals. Anybody know what that one is? I think that's an Althea. They call it Rosa Sharon. I think that's what that one is. So the sepals here are more obvious than they were in lab today. The sepals here, which would be the bud, right? The covering, the outside of the bud. There's these green pointy guys here that break open and let the petals out. So they're your outermost circle of your floral parts. And they enclose the bud before it opens. If you can remember that it's whatever encloses that bud before it opens, you should be able to identify them. And it protects the little developing flower. So what are the petals? How would you define them? Yeah.
The part of the flower that attracts pollinators.
Yeah, they're colorful. They're found outside, just inside the sepals, and their colors, number, and shapes attract insects and other pollinators, right? That is the purpose. Woo, look at me, I'm fancy, come here, right? That's the purpose of them. So then you have your stamen, and they're composed of different parts. What are the 2 parts that make up your stamen?
There are anther and the pollen.
Anther and filament. There you go. Okay, anther and filament. So this is the male part of the flower. The filament is this stalk, right? This big long stalk. And then the anther is the little guy at the top. And what do you find in the anther? There you go. That's your pollen. Your pollen or your male gametophyte is going to be right up there. You can really see it here. Pretty sure this is a lily anther. If you've ever received a bouquet of lilies, or maybe you've been at a church that has Easter lilies everywhere, very often they will take the time to remove all of the stamen from the lilies because lily pollen stains. I ruined a shirt with some lilies once, like ruined. Never could get the stain out no matter what I did to it. It's kind of a yellowish orange stain. And then, have you ever had saffron in your food? Like that's a pollen, and that makes your rice like bright yellow. So that's a pollen as well. So then we talked about the carpels. Okay, carpels and pistils there's different ways to break it down and categorize it, including, which parts are included versus which parts are not included. So carpels in general are your innermost floral parts. They shelter the female gametophytes, which later become seeds. So pistil is part of your carpel, right? And a single carpel can have several fused carpels in it like this, or pistils really, several fused pistils. So if this is, anybody know what that one is? Do you reckon? That's a hibiscus, yeah. They make great tea, don't they? You ever had hibiscus tea? It's so good, yeah. So what you've got here is basically like a bunch of styles that are sort of individual pistil parts that join together to make this fused carpel situation. And what's the long part between the stigma and the ovary? The big long piece? That's
Style.
Yeah, that's your style. Okay. So that's the style. Diameter of the carpel that narrows into the stalk come down like this. In this case, you can see this big long, this is like a compound one. They're not all compound, like the one you had today was not, but sometimes you are. You get this fun stuff going on. All right. And then the stigma, what is the stigma? Caitlin.
Brightly colored parts just inside the sepal.
Yeah, so it's up here on top of the very top of the pistil. It's these little guys right here. What did you notice about your stigma today? Did you check it to see something? Did you tap it? What is it?
Very sticky.
It was very sticky. Okay. Why is it sticky? Yeah, it collects the pollen, so it's very sticky. And it can be feathery or sticky. Look at this one, looks like velvet, right? So if the pollen lands on it, it's going to embed itself in there quite cozily, right? Um, why are the bees going to the flowers? Do they care about the flowers getting fertilized and making fruit? What are the bees after?
Nectar.
They're after nectar. So what's the nectar, do you suppose?
Things that with honey.
They make honey with it.
It's sweet too.
It's sweet. But we're sitting here talking about how this is sticky. Yeah?
It's sugar.
It's sugar. That gives you an idea of what's in there. There's sugar and water in there that makes it sticky, like a wet lollipop, right? And that is basically kind of where your nectar situation is coming from. So, who enjoys honeysuckle? I cannot help myself. I have a bunch of it that grows on my fence, and I am out there sucking down honeysuckle every chance I get in the spring, like I'm 4 years old again, because I really like it. So you pull that nectar down into the bottom, and then yeah, it's really good. So that's what the bees are after, right? But it serves a purpose. That sticky fluid is how the pollen is going to stay on top of that stigma and make its way down into the ovary and fertilize the ovules. So each carpel has a broad base forming an ovary, which contains one or more ovules where female gametophytes are produced. Okay, so there's a jalapeno, a cross section of a jalapeno pepper. Your fruit is your mature ovary. So that is true for whether your fruit is a tomato, a jalapeno pepper, an acorn. It's still that is your mature ovary is your fruit. So you can see here that it arranged its ovules into three little chambers, right? And here is a longitudinal section. This is a cross section. This is a longitudinal section. We'll be learning all those body planes next quarter a lot. So if you look here in this longitudinal section, you can see all these little ovules within the ovary. And those, when they're fertilized, are what become your seeds. So what is number one showing here? It's showing this structure and this structure. So when you combine those two, you get what? Xander. Not the style. Right here, this guy and this guy together. You're close. Jordan? Stamen. Yep, there's your stamen. These two together. So then what's the one on the top?
Anther.
That's your anther. And what's the long one called? That's your filament. Very good. Okay, so your anther and your filament together make your stamen. This is the male or female part? Which is it? Everybody? It's the male part. Right. Okay. So let's pop over here. What's all this together? So all this together, you're looking at this piece, and this piece. And when they're all together, they make what? Caitlin? She had it. Nope, you lost it. Yusuf.
Pistol.
Yeah, so you can call this pistil or you can call this carpel. If you've got compound situation going on, like that hibiscus, a carpel would be probably more correct. But if you just have one, pistil is fine. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So then what's the guy at the top called? Okay, Caitlin. That's your stigma. And what's this long one called, Kenna? Style. And what's at the bottom of it? Oh, Isabella. There's your ovary, right? And what's inside the ovary over here at number 8? Yeah, good, Barrett. Ovules. And what is this colorful part? Everybody? Yeah. And then what's this thing that holds on to the petals, Eunice? That's your sepal. Very good. Okay. So this is your whole diagram. You might have to do this again, so I'd pay attention to it. Yes? Yes. Okay.
Picture of it.
So angiosperm, you want to take a picture of it?
Yes.
There you go. You can also go back and pull this out of your lesson, or yeah, the lesson slides are always there. Oh, look at all the smart people going, I want to take a picture of this. Because
You also said you might need to see it. You will see it again. So that's kind of teacher for it's going to be on.
That, yeah, you know. Yep. Okay, so angiosperm life cycle. So we're talking about flowering plants, right? That produce fruit. if you were to look at pollen grains, some very, very small ones under an electron microscope, you might get an image kind of like this. They can look very different depending upon the species. They can be spiky. They can have little dents in them. They can look like golf balls. There's all kinds of different
It can have
shapes.
color though.
No, this is a graphic version of what it might look like. Good point. Electron microscope would not have any color. So the male gametophytes or the pollen grains develop inside the anthers. Okay, that's where they develop, is in the anthers, right? And then first you get meiosis, gives you 4 little haploid, what they call spore cells, and then they undergo a meiotic division to produce 2 haploid nuclei. And then you end up with 2 nuclei surrounded by a thick wall that protects the male gametophyte. So you end up with 2 pollen grains for every start of every meiotic process to get your gametes, right? Now, for the ovules, it's going to be different. So for the ovules, ooh, does anybody know what that is? That's a cross section of something. That's okra. Anybody like okra? I like okra. Yeah. Oh, what have you got?
Cucumber.
Cucumber. That is a Boster family staple, and I think it's hilarious. This is funny, just so you know, as an aside, I know Claire's family very well. There are 7 children and they all eat cucumber. So any party you go to, there's always cucumber because they all eat it. I think it may be the only thing they all eat, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love it. You go to the Boster parties, you're guaranteed cucumber. I think it's funny. And I picked up on that a couple years ago and asked your mom, I'm like, is this the one thing your kids all eat? She's like, yeah. I'm like, because it's at every party. So anyway, this is okra, best fried okra, in my opinion. That joint in downtown Dahlonega, that what is it? Is it Smith House or something? You know, the place where you get the family style food? You go in and like they put all the stuff out on the table and you share the bowls. Do the fried okra there, man. It is amazing. So for the female, remember we said for every meiotic process that's making male gametophytes, you end up with how many pollen grains?
2.
2. Okay. So with the female process, it's different. They're going to develop inside of that little ovule at the bottom of the carpel. They're your future seeds, but you end up with 4 haploid cells, 3 disintegrate. So how many gametophytes do you end up with at the end? 1. So you get 2 pollen grains for every meiotic process that starts, and for every meiotic process that starts. For female gametophytes, you get 1. The other 3 just disintegrate. They go away. No good. Something similar happens in mammals, actually. So angiosperm life cycles. We start with pollination, which is when your male and female portions of the flower come together. You've got your gametophyte, your male gametophyte making its way to your female gametophyte. So some are by wind, some are by water, most are going to be by animals. Plants take advantage of animals in order to reproduce. So, and that can be done in different ways. So you got insect pollination, which is your most obvious, and some birds, right? Look at that beautiful hummingbird. And here's a bee. And these guys are gonna come get your nectar because that's their food. And in that process, they're gonna end up taking some pollen with them. And when they go to the next flower, they're gonna move that pollen. Everybody knows that. That's like 4th grade, right? We all know that. Bees are pollinators. This is why you have to be very careful if you're, say, trying to exterminate wasps. Okay, you have to be very careful what you're using because you don't want to use something that will also kill honeybees or other pollinators.
Shoot.
Fortunately for us, our neighbors back here now have got 2 hives in their yard, and they gave us a jar of honey, and we've all commented, Drew's rolled his eyes because we've commented it a million times, but the honey tastes like our backyard smells. Like I think primarily it was the honeysuckle and the privet blossom that those particular bees fed on. But when we all tasted it for the first time, we were all like, okay, that is really weird. Like it's, if you go out in the spring, that's how it smells and that's how that honey tastes. That's why you can get honey that you can get clover honey, you can get sorghum honey, you can get orange blossom, apple blossom, wherever the bees are located. And that does affect the flavor of the honey. If you've ever been to Savannah Bee Company or seen any of their satellite stores, they will sell like individual sample bottles of all the different kinds of honey. And you can actually taste the difference in them because their sources for the nectar is different and it impacts the flavor of the honey. So it's pretty darn cool. Bees in general are fascinating to really deeply study because they have such a cool social structure. Yeah, such a cool social structure, and their whole process of, producing honey and growing their little larvae is just, it's really wild.
My entire feed right now is the hive, the distraction.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Like to watch the bees. So, I think do they still have at Sawney Mountain Preserve? Do they still have the beehive that's partially indoors, partially outdoors? They had one there that you could see from the inside. And they have a Whole Foods?
Used to have one.
I love that. It's very cool. There's also a couple ladies on Instagram. One in particular, his name I can't remember, but you could probably Google honeybee lady on honeybee remover. But she will come and get, like, sometimes honeybees will do something not good, like they'll start making their hive like in your roof or behind your siding, and they really need to go, but you don't want to kill them, because if we don't have pollinators, we don't have food, right? We need our pollinators healthy. We need our honeybees healthy. They're a huge, important part of the food chain. People don't think about them sometimes, but they're necessary. So if you get them in your house or something, or like in your yard in a bad place, they can remove them. And this lady, I don't know if has anybody ever seen her? She just does it with her bare hands.
Mhm.
She talks in this voice that's very ASMR. Here are the bees. The bees are a little angry today. I shall move the bees. And it's like, she's very chill to listen to. And I look at her and I'm like, no, I'm not picking up bees with my bare hands. Will he pick them up with his bare hands? Like, she picks up like it's like picking up like a bunch of stuffed animals or something, like a pile of them, and then she just relocates them. It's wild. That's not going to be me. I have an EpiPen for stinging insects. That's not going to be me.
Spray or something that's
Smoke.
Yeah, smoke.
They use smoke. I watch my neighbors do it.
They
use smoke because it kind of makes them, yeah, and then they can move them, right? So insect pollination is more efficient than wind pollination, giving insect pollinated plants a greater chance of reproductive success. Okay, now we're going to do something a little different. We're not going to watch this here, because the last time I did this class, this entire video got refused from YouTube because this, for whatever reason, gets tagged. Like last week, something we used got tagged. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to skip over here real quick, and we're going to, oops, I can't see. We're going to watch it here, because that way my video won't get tagged. So this is bees in slow motion, and look for where the pollen on their body kind
Why
of,
does it get tagged?
because it's protected, like trademarked.
Oh.
I don't know why that embedded video does over any other. It's really random. But you can see, like, see where some of them are the little pollen collects on them? The little hairs and little sticky parts on their legs. They're cool, dude. I like them. So we'll go back now. It shouldn't be a problem now. Okay. So fertilization, how's this work? So oh, yes. So that's a good question. If you look at them from an evolutionary standpoint, what would be the purpose of the hair? So that's the question you ask yourself. And is it to move pollen? Is that the bee's goal? Or does it just really work that way? I'm not even sure. I don't think that there is an evolutionary. Well, there is, because you want your plants to continue to grow, because that's your food source. So having the hair would be advantageous in that way. But every trait that exists is there because it's an advantage for some reason, right? That every adaptation is advantageous, or it eventually evolves out of the system. So if you Googled why do bees have hair on their legs, it will probably tell you it's to move pollen. But if you Google why did bees evolve hair on their legs, you might get a different answer. And I'm not entirely sure what you'd find, so it would be interesting to see. So if a pollen grain lands on a stigma of a flower of the same species, it begins to grow a pollen tube. Other pollen from other flowers is not going to do this, because we have to have species to species, right? Different species don't mate. That's one thing that qualifies as a species, right? They can reproduce together. Here's the thing. When that pollen lands on top of that stigma, it makes a tube. It doesn't grow a tube. It bores itself chemically through the tissue down to the ovule. It bores a little hole as it goes, which is really kind of cool. And one of the pollen's grains, two cells, one cell, the generative cell divides and forms two sperm cells, like we said before. And the other cell becomes the tube. So you get these two, they're stuck together. One of them kind of disintegrates as it goes, as it bores its way through and sort of forms the tube chemically. Kind of cool. The pollen tube contains a tube nucleus and two sperm cells. And the pollen tube grows into the style where it eventually reaches the ovary and enters an ovule. And then boom, you got fertilization. So here's a little video that kind of shows how that works.
After pollen grains have landed on the stigma of the same plant species, they are stimulated by the sugary solution on the stigma and germinate to form pollen tubes. The pollen tube secretes enzymes to digest the tissues of the style. It grows down the style and then into the ovary, carrying the male gamete towards the ovule. The tube grows through the micropyle and releases the male gamete into the ovule. Finally, the male gamete fuses with the female gamete, forming a zygote. This process is called fertilization.
So there you go. You can see kind of how it works. All right, what are those called? Anybody know? Do you know? Yeah, hens and chicks, chicks and hens. Yep. That's a great succulent that's easy to grow, apparently. Do you? There you go. Yeah, yeah. I tend to not do well growing plants. I have three to my name, and one of them's that aloe back there, which is also a succulent, and it does pretty well. But I'm this guy had a flower on it when I got it. It's an orchid. It may never flower again because that's how they are. Even though I have a friend that's like an orchid expert and he repotted it for me and everything, it doesn't do much. But I have that pathos in the pub that's growing up the wall. I just keep putting little clips and making it go. It's kind of fun to watch it. So vegetative reproduction is the formation of new individuals by mitosis and does not require gametes, flowers, or fertilization. This is when plants make more of, like these guys will do it. They'll just keep making more little plants from the first plant. It's not a whole process of forming a seed and a new plant growing. So new plants grow from roots, leaves, stems, or plantlets, little guys. And this takes place naturally in many plants. So examples would be potatoes can grow eyes. Everybody's seen this, right? If you forget about your potato for too long, it'll start to do that, right? They grow eyes and then the eyes produce little babies. Potatoes are coming off of there. You can take potatoes like this and cut them up and grow them. Last year, my mom saw a whole thing about growing them in a hamper. And she was like, yeah, she was hell bent on trying the hamper growth situation. And I think we had a couple of potatoes about that big in the end. And she was like, well, that was a waste of my summer. But we tried. Some people are real good at growing potatoes. We have not been. Anybody good at potatoes? No. But you get strawberries, for example. And these guys get these long trailing stems called stolons, and they produce root stems and leaves. This is also how Bermuda grass works. And most of you probably have Bermuda grass. It's the kind of most popular grass in this area because it withstands the high heat of summer. But if you ever try to pull up Bermuda grass, if you ever pulled it up and you get like it's this long and it has all these little separate chunks on it, same idea. Strawberries do the same thing. They grow these long little stolons and then that roots and you get a new plant.
Is that like the above ground equivalent of rhizome?
Similar idea. Yeah, very similar idea to like how rhizomes work, mycelium work, that same concept. Yeah. Shut up, Yusuf, before I shoot you. Shall I? Shall I, ladies and gents? We have one. We have a winner. Oh.
Wait.
This is too good. Welcome back. Nice to see you. Sit up, but sit on the floor if you need to. Very good. Okay, so that was fun. least once a year. Okay, all right.
Center of
Yeah, center mass. I did my best. Yep.
just that point, but
That's why I try center mass. So many cactus species drop sections of their stems that grow at the base of larger adults. Everybody seen these guys? I've seen these guys when I visited Arizona, these little round ones. I don't know what they're called, but they look very painful should you trip and fall. And the benefits of this process are obviously you can reproduce quickly, and it's going to make genetically identical offspring, which is going to enable well-adapted individuals to rapidly fill a favorable environment. And the drawback, no new combination of genetic traits. So if there's a problem in your environment, you're all dead, right? That's the issue. So vegetative reproduction a little more. You can propagate your plants from cuttings. Some plants will do this really, really well. I've actually got, I think it's in there. I have a little piece of rosemary that's starting to grow roots in the water. And then I have some Dusty Miller that's starting to grow. Dusty Miller will do it. Sedum, I have sedum in the yard. Every time I cut sedum and put it in a little vase somewhere, within a week, it's got roots, right? Some plants don't do it so well. I tried this with a beautiful white camellia from church and had zero luck. It just died in the bowl. But it's one of the simplest ways to reproduce plants vegetatively is by cuttings. You can do it in water. There are also, I've also seen it done with little it's sort of like cuttings, but it's not quite cuttings. Have you seen the process where they take a branch and they strip the bark off that area of the branch and then they put like a clamshell around it that has dirt in it? And that's not really a cutting because it's almost just like just basic vegetative reproduction. It'll grow a new plant there and you can pop that off and then you've got even a root ball, and it's really kind of cool. But a grower can cut the plant from a length of stem that includes a number of buds containing meristem tissue. You have to have meristem tissue because remember that's totipotent, so it can develop into different types of tissue, so it can grow roots. If you don't have meristem, you're not going to get any vegetation growth, new vegetative growth, just from sticking it in water like that. Stem is partially buried in soil or water or in a mixture of nutrients that encourages root formation. They have stuff you can dip the cutting in that will help it, like a powder that can help it grow. But the trick is you have to have meristem. And some ways you can tell if you have meristem based on the way the plant is growing. I'm not always successful, obviously, since my camellia did not work. So fruits and seeds, what's that? Who recognizes? That's a pomegranate. Yeah. All right. Do you have a method for getting the seeds out of a pomegranate? Everybody has a different method. What's your method? I do the water. I'm the water method, like underneath, and then the pith and the membrane float and the seeds sink. I've also seen the spoon method. Have you seen the spoon method? You just whack it repeatedly with the spoon and the seeds will fall out. I love pomegranate, but they are so much work and they will stain your fingers and they're a mess, but they're delicious. So how do fruits form? What are those? Kiwis. Everybody knows that. Yeah. Angiosperm seeds mature, ovary walls thicken, and it forms your fruit that encloses your developing seeds. What color are the seeds in the kiwi? Everybody, you've seen them. Black, itty bitty black seeds, right? Tiny little seeds. Once fertilization of an angiosperm is complete, nutrients flow into the flower tissue and support the development of the growing embryo within the seed. Fruit is a matured angiosperm ovary, usually containing seeds, and they can vary in their structure. These are all fruits. This looks like a fruit. This looks like a fruit. What would you normally call that? A vegetable. And what would you normally call those? Those are peanuts. Yeah, okay. But these are all fruit.
Vegetables or
Peanuts are a legume, which peanuts are interesting. If you're speaking from a perspective of cuisine, you might lump them in with nuts, but they're not tree nuts. They're legumes, which means they're more similar to peas and green beans, even though we treat them like almonds and cashews, right? But
the word nut in them.
Yeah, they have the word nut in them. It's actually a dry seed. But technically speaking, they're all fruit. Even your veggies that aren't leaves, like your veggies that are collards or lettuce, are not fruit. But your legumes, a lot of the other, not your tubers, not your roots, like your carrots, those are not fruit. But a lot of what you eat and think of as vegetables are actually fruits. So it applies to the sweet things we think of, obviously, But peas, corn, rice, tomatoes, these are all fruits.
Isn't a vegetable really just like a cooking term like for
Yeah, it's just culinary. It's just the way it's the stuff that's more savory, less sweet. That's what we tend to think of as vegetables, right? The ovary wall surrounding the fruit may be fleshy, like grapes or tomatoes, or it can be tough and dry, like the shell that surrounds the peanut. So think of this, the peanut is the seed, right? The peanut is the mature, fertilized ovule. But the ovary itself, the part of the apple that you eat, in the peanut, it's the hard shell, which you don't typically eat. Even when they're boiled and soft, you might crunch the shell, but most people don't eat peanut shells. It's a little odd, right? So you have to remember that even if it doesn't look like what you think of as a fruit, biologically speaking, that's a fruit. So this is that, I've heard it called jewel corn, but it's like a type of what they call Indian corn, but it's the colorful corn, right? Yeah, not candy corn. Who likes candy corn here? I do. Who hates it with a purple passion? Yeah, there you go. There's always all right, there you go. It's funny. That is a polarizing candy. If ever there was a polarizing candy, it is candy corn. I think that's the one. So, seeds contained in fleshy, nutritious fruits are usually dispersed by animals. Seeds dispersed by wind or water are typically contained in lightweight fruits that allow them to be carried in the air, or in buoyant fruits that allow them to float on the surface of the water. So here we have a little fluffy dog, and what is going on in his little beard? What's he got, Isabella?
Burr.
Burrs. Anybody ever had to pull those out of your dog? Is that like not fun experience? And your dog just loves you for it, right? Your dog just loves having burrs ripped out of his or her fur.
When they're on their butt.
Never fun. Yeah, never fun. And what's that? Can you tell what that is?
Swarm of insects.
No, that's somebody's windshield. It's bird poop, but look at the color of the bird poop. You ever seen that?
Airy and gusty.
You ever seen bird poop that's bright purple like that? Yeah, so this bird was probably eating blackberries or pokeberries or mulberries or something to that effect, and landed that on someone's windshield. Thank you very much. And you can tell what they've been eating. Your poop changes color based on what you eat, right? Yep. So does anybody know the three danger colors for human poop? If you see one of these three, you call your doctor. Do you know?
Green.
No, green's actually a normal color.
Yeah.
Do you know? Red's one.
Yellow?
Nope, yellow's normal. Black, red, black. The other one is white. It's UGA colors. If your poop is UGA colored, call your doctor. If it's red, white, or black, you have a problem. Isn't that great? Okay. So seeds can sprout in feces eliminated from an animal, like that lovely purple mess there, or out in the yard, wherever your creatures are going. And those fruits are going to provide nutrition for the animal, but it helps the plant disperse the seeds, often to areas where there is less competition with parent plants. Okay, seeds obviously that are meant to be consumed and then distributed in feces have to have a hard enough seed casing that they can go through a digestive system and not be damaged. Some go through a digestive system, and that process helps the seed germinate because it kind of breaks down the seed coat just enough. And it's like a signal that you've gone through a process and you're broken down some, and now you're being delivered in a nice, nutritious packet on the ground so you can grow, right? What's that? Is it argan oil? I think it's argan oil. You ever heard of that? It's like a cosmetic. Like people put it on their faces and stuff. I think that's the one that comes from a particular tree that climbing goats go up and eat the seeds and then poop them out, and then they collect the seeds from the poop to make the argan oil. I think it's argan oil. You'll have to double check me on that, but I think that's the one.
Remember the elephant poop coffee or something, and take the seeds from the elephant?
I wouldn't be surprised. People do all kinds of things. People are inventive.
infection displays based on bug.
No, carmine. I think you're thinking of carmine color is made from beetle shell. Can be made from beetle shell. Is that what you're thinking?
No, it's like bug food, like infection.
Oh, I don't know what kind. The kind I use isn't. I hope not. So animals can disperse many dry fruits, but not necessarily by eating them. They usually have burrs or hooks that catch the fur. This is like when we were inventing Velcro, when NASA was inventing Velcro, this is one of the things they looked at. How do these burrs get stuck in hair or on pants or whatever so well? What do they look like under a microscope? How can we replicate this and produce it in a product? And you get Velcro, right? Then you have the kind that are dispersed by wind. Did anybody notice I was wearing dandelions? Ta-da! I'm wearing dandelions today. So these are the things that, I don't know, I've always called them helicopters. Call them helicopters. These are the maples, right? And the seeds right here, right? And all the rest of this wing, the whole purpose of it is to catch the wind and woo. And then when you look at a dandelion, here's the seed down here. This little guy on the end of this little parachute, right? So seeds dispersed by wind are typically contained in lightweight fruits that allow them to be carried in the air. You're not going to see like, a watermelon floating through the air. That's not going to work, right? A dandelion seed, for example, is attached to a dry fruit that has a parachute-like structure, allowing the seed to glide considerable distances away from the parent plant. Milkweed's the same way, but they're bigger. Those are the ones that my cousin and I called fairies when we were little kids, and we try and catch them. They're real big. They float by. They're like big puff balls. They're really pretty. And coconuts are your best example of seeds dispersed by water. If you've ever been on Google Earth and like zoomed into an island in the middle of no flipping where in the Pacific, you might spot palm trees and little coconuts on the ground and think, how in the world did the first palm tree get there? Well, that's how.
It's a swallow.
It's a swallow. There, it's a great answer. It was a swallow. He says, yeah, there we go. There we go. Who doesn't get the joke? Who needs help with that? Okay, explain.
Well, in 1974,
Good.
There was a movie created by a British comedy group called Monty Python and the Holy Grail. One of the running jokes in that movie is instead of riding horses, they are collecting coconuts together. And as King Arthur and his noble steed approaches the castle after having a political discussion with several peasants, he asks the lord of the castle if he would like to join his quest, the Holy Grail. Instead, he has a lengthy discussion about the aerodynamicity of a swallow carrying a coconut, and whether or not it is possible for a swallow, be it European or African, to carry a coconut from where the heck coconuts grow. Specifically, the Britons.
Very good. That's the best answer I've ever heard. There you go.
Maybe the island could have, like, the other part of the island was submerged under water.
That could be, yeah. Usually what you get is this little guy floated on the ocean. Woo! And look, he's already sprouting when he's hit the land. So some seeds, like a coconut, are dispersed by water. Coconut fruits are buoyant enough to float in seawater for weeks, enabling seeds to reach and colonize even those remote islands. So when we talk about dormancy and germination, we can talk about cotyledons. So cotyledons are the first, they call these leaves, right? They don't look like leaves, but they call them leaves, just kind of like we talked about specialized reproductive parts being specialized leaves, right? They store nutrients and then transfer them to the growing embryo as the seed germinates. So your monocots have how many cotyledons? One cotyledon. Flower parts grow in multiples of? Everybody? Three. And the veins on the leaves grow how? Parallel. Very good. So these guys have a single cotyledon, usually remains underground while it passes nutrients to the young plant, and a growing monocot shoot has a little sheath on it that protects it as it pushes up through the soil. Now you have dicots. Have how many cotyledons? Two. Petal parts and flower parts grow in multiples of 4 or 5. Very good. And what do the veins on the leaves of dicots look like? Yeah, branched or non-parallel. Very good. Very, very good. Now, these guys don't typically remain underground. They come up above ground. You'll see them. But the tip of the shoot doesn't have a sheath to protect it. So instead, it comes up like a little hook, like so. It comes up that way to keep it safe as it pokes through the soil. Now, what are some advantages of dormancy? You've noticed some plants that go dormant in the winter, right? They just kind of are little sticks. They don't look like much. Hydrangeas are a great example. They're little sticks, right? So seed dormant, and then seeds can be dormant too. So think about the radish seeds that you had in lab last week. They were in that little glass vial. I've had those seeds for at least 4 years because I bought that packet 4 years ago when I did that biology class. So 4 years I've had those seeds, and I soaked them for 12 hours in water, and they had sprouted within 24 hours, right? So advantages is it can allow for long distance dispersal and for seeds to germinate under ideal growth conditions. So for some species, a period of cold temperatures during which seeds are dormant is required before they can grow. The period of cold is required is long enough that the seeds will not germinate until dangerous winter season has passed. Sometimes only extreme environmental conditions can end seed dormancy. Some pine trees, for example, will produce seeds in cones that remain sealed until high temperatures generated by forest fires causes the cones to open. High temperature both activates and releases the seeds, allowing the plants to reclaim the forest quickly after a fire. So some seeds need a period of cold in order to germinate, so they don't come up at the wrong time of year, and others need a period of extreme heat in order to germinate, which allows those plants to repopulate after something like a fire happens. So now we talk about plant hormones. Before this unit, had you ever thought about plants having hormones? Had it ever occurred to you that plants might have hormones? Kind of weird, right? Like you tend to think of hormones like, oh, it's a teenage thing. No. It's an everything thing. Uh-huh. It's weird looking in it. Oh, wait. This is my favorite. I learned this one from Claire's brother and sister, actually.
Did you, Michael?
Yeah. You know the little thing at the very end of the banana? It exists down here in the tip, and everybody breaks it off, and nobody eats it. Mm-hmm. Does anybody have a name for it? Claire, what do they call that in your house? The bananas? The first time Michael said bananas, I said, excuse me, what? And he said, you know, the part nobody eats is the bananas. And I was like, that's the best thing I've ever. So now that's what I call it. So it's the bananas. We've all adopted that term. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. So
Which part of the banana?
Yeah, it's just that part at the end that nobody eats. It's that little kind of pasty part. It's weird. Yeah. So what roles do hormones play? A lot. So these are chemical signals produced by a living organism that affect growth, activity, development of cells, and tissues within them. So hormones are super important no matter what the organism is. Plant hormones serve as signals that control development of cells, tissues, and organs. They also coordinate responses to the environment, which I think is the coolest part. This is how, remember, living things have to be able to grow and reproduce, right? What else do they have to do? Do you remember? Nobody remembers? Living things have to grow, reproduce, and respond to stimuli, right? Right? This is how we say it's alive, right? So plants respond to stimuli. That's why, like, you know, they lean towards the light or whatever that case might be. So there are some opposing effect of plant hormones that contribute to the balance necessary for homeostasis. So some will cause something to happen, some will make it stop, that whole sort of process. And they coordinate responses to the environment. And they can act on the same cells in which they're made, or they can travel through the plant and act on different cells. So what kind of roles do hormones play? So hormone producing cells in a mature flower release the hormones into the bud that can either inhibit the development or tell it to open. It can tell it not to open yet. Conditions aren't right. So when the flower opens, how long the flower is there, when the flower falls off is all controlled by hormones within the plant. So a portion of an organism affected by a particular hormone is known as its target cell. That is the same thing in humans. Target organs, target cells. We'll talk about that. Like, for example, the target, well, no, I'll wait till we get to it. I'll wait till we get to that. That's next quarter. But that's the same thing in humans. Target cells, target organs, that kind of situation. So to respond to a hormone, a cell must contain the hormone receptors. It has to be ready for that hormone. Not every cell is going to respond to every hormone because not every cell is going to have the right receptors for particular hormones. The response that results will depend on what kinds of receptors are present in the target cell, and depending on the receptors present, a given hormone may affect roots differently, and in the same way, the same hormone can affect roots differently than it affects stems, than it affects flowers. So the effect can be different based on where it's being targeted. So we talk about auxins. Now, last week I talked about plants leaning to the light and how water's part of that. Water's part of that. That's not all of it. Auxins are the biggest part of it, and it has to do with cell elongation. So Darwin and his son Francis were trying to figure out why grass will bend towards the light. Anybody ever grown grass in a little cup and watched it grow to the light or whatever? It'll do that. So they were saying there's something in that tip of that seedling that's telling it to grow into the light. Those are great, right? I think the hedgehog's my favorite. That guy maybe though. He's pretty cool. I like them. They're fun. So auxins stimulate cell elongation and the growth of new roots, among other roles. They are produced in the shoot apical meristem, which is at the tippy top of the plant where it's growing, and transported to the rest of the plant. All right. Here's your how plants bend to the light. Here's our little seedling. The light's coming this way, right? Okay, so
Is that for me?
no. So this side of the plant is shaded. So auxins are going to collect in that side of the plant that is shaded. And it's going to tell the cells on this left side of the plant, hey, there's no light over there. You need to go to the light. And those cells on that side are going to get longer, which does mean they do have to collect more water and stuff because they're going to change shape. So you'll get, right? These cells are going to elongate. And as they elongate, that plant is going to bend. So that's how that happened as well with your roots, with your gravitropism or geotropism, as we'll see it's called in this lesson. It's the same thing. But those cells in the root were detecting, okay, I'm growing this way and now I've been turned here. Okay, I need to go this way. So these cells are going to elongate and it's going to turn that way. And it'll keep turning based on the cells on the opposite side from the direction it needs to go, getting longer, so it pushes it and causes it to bend. So cell elongation is one thing that auxins do. When light hits one side of a shoot, the auxins collect in the shaded side, and then those cells are going to elongate. That's going to involve bringing in more water. They're longer, and it's going to just basically push that plant towards the light. So they also are involved in branching. So they regulate cell division in meristems. Growth at lateral buds can be inhibited by auxins because auxins move from apical meristem. The closer a bud to the stem's tip, the more it's inhibited. So they're involved in apical dominance, which is lateral buds near the apex grow more slowly than those near the base of a plant. And if you snip a tip of a plant, the lateral buds begin to grow more quickly and the plant becomes bushier. You ever done that? Cut back plants so that they become more full? Yeah, that's how that works. And this is because the apical meristem has a source of growth inhibiting auxins and it has been eliminated. So now it will grow bushier instead of keep growing up. And then we have cytokinins. What do cytokinins do? Anybody know what cytokinins do? What you got, Caitlin?
Stimulate cell division and produce and growing roots and developing.
There you go. Yes. So the plant hormones produced in the growing roots and developing fruits and seeds. This is what these guys do. They stimulate cell division. They interact with auxins to control the growth of new organs in injured plants and balance root and shoot growth. They delay the aging of leaves and play important roles in the early stages of plant growth. They produce effects opposite to the auxins. Auxins stimulate the initiation of root growths, and they inhibit the initiation of growth of new shoot tips. Cytokinins do the opposite. They tell it grow. So if a tree is cut down, the stump will make new shoots because of cytokinins. We were talking about you can get that black paint, that special paint, seal it up so they can't make new shoots. Those cytokinins will be sad, but oh well. I like this one because I like the name. Gibberellins is fun. It's a fun name. Gibberellins are hormones that stimulate growth and influence various developmental processes. So they do lots of things. They promote germination of plants, can cause size increases, particularly in stems and fruits, found in the meristems of shoots, roots, seeds, embryos. Fun name. Do a lot of general stuff. Abscisic acid this is what interacts with the gibberellins, and it controls things like dormancy in seeds and all this other stuff. Terminal buds and seeds. You don't have to know all of these details, but seeds development is complete, then it'll stop it from growing. Basically, these are like a check on what's happening. Like, let's make sure we don't keep growing beyond when we need to grow. That sort of deal. Embryo is going to rest until the environment events shift, and then the hormones will balance out and it'll be good to go. So then we've also got ethylene. Now this one matters a lot. This one is your ripening and rotting and dying and living guy, right? This is your guy that has all the important jobs. So why, if you put an unripened banana in a brown paper bag, why is it going to ripen faster? Does anybody know? You know?
The banana, like, it has the chemical, so if it has that.
It's ethylene.
Makes the rest of the fruit ripen, so if you
Yes.
trap all of it in there, it'll stay there.
Yes, if you trap it in, then it's going to more strongly affect that banana and help it to ripen. This is also why if you put a banana right next to another banana, they'll both ripen more quickly than if you separate. Some people will separate out their bananas because they don't want them to ripen too fast, right? So ethylene, and it also will lead you all the way from your ripe apple to your rotten apple. So ethylene, in response to auxins, fruit tissues release small amounts of ethylene, which is going to stimulate fruit to ripen. It can also cause plants to seal off and drop organs that are no longer needed. For example, petals after flowers have been pollinated, leaves in the autumn, and ripened fruits. Ethylene signals cells at the base of the structure to seal off from the rest of the plant by depositing waterproof materials in their walls. Like, oh, you're done. Basically what that black paint does, it does to itself in these cases. So anyway, what? Go back. Stop. This is an important one. Ethylene's a very important one. And it is that sometimes you can, I remember in organic chemistry, sometimes similar compounds are produced and they actually smell like bananas. Like if you produce ethylene compounds in a organic chemistry lab, they have a weird kind of banana-ish smell. It's kind of weird. The banana is a good example, but that's actually, you get a weird smell like that. So then we have our tropisms, okay? These are my favorites. I love the tropisms. So this is how plants respond to the environmental stimuli. So it's things like light, which is going to be what kind of tropism, everybody? Phototropism. Gravity, which is gravitropism or geotropism. You can do it either way. Temperature is thermotropism. Water is hydrotropism. You can have chemicals, that's chemotropism, right? And then touch is thigmotropism. Okay. Plants have sensors that detect the direction of stimuli and signal elongating organs to orient their growth toward or away from the stimuli. What's that? Yeah, and it looks like he's caught a little dude in there, right? So these are these plants that primarily, obviously, they're photosynthetic, but they'll eat animals too. They'll dissolve them and then digest them and get extra nutrients from them. So these growth responses are called tropisms, all right? So phototropism is the first one we're going to talk about, and this is probably the easiest one to recall because everybody's probably seen it before. It's the tendency of a plant to grow toward a light source. And we just talked about how that happens. You've got auxins. So in this one, you've got auxins on this side of the plant over here, that side, because it's shaded. And see how it's pushed see how the whole stem's leaning that way? The whole stem leans that way because it's leaning towards the light. Tendency of a plant to grow toward a light source is phototropism. Changes in the concentration of auxins, which we just said, are responsible for it. Experiments have shown that auxins migrate towards the shaded tissue, possibly due to changes in membrane permeability in response to the light. That's the question. How do the auxins go to the shaded tissue? And what they suspect is that the membranes somehow become more or less permeable based on how little or how much light they're exposed to. And maybe that's how all the auxins collect where they collect. Because it's not like the plant's going, oh, there's the light. You know, it's not thinking, right? Somehow it's responding. So some of these mechanisms are still Not completely understood. Gravitropism or geotropism is what you just did in your lab, right? So these are auxins that also affect this. Now, what do you suppose happened there? What do you think?
Landslide.
Landslide is what he thinks. Uh-huh. Anything else?
Repeated snow.
Repeated snow. That could be.
Strong wind.
Strong wind. I think those are probably our best. Do you have another one?
It looks like one started it and then like the others moved to adjust to that and it just kept going. Like one moves to sunlight and then one
It's
got
a popularity contest. They're all copying. Yeah. Dr. Seuss. Very good. So I think landslide is probably or at least the top level of soil is probably our most likely culprit here, but it could be wind as well. So these plants were all growing, you can see, up, just that little bit at the bottom grew up. Then they got knocked over by something. Probably the soil shifted. Doesn't look like there's much of a slant there though. So it could have been wind. It could have been tornado type winds, right? But whatever it is, it all came from the same direction. It pushed them all down.
Some are straight.
Yeah, some are a little straighter than others. See, some of those didn't quite get impacted. Maybe they were bigger and stronger at the time that whatever happened and they didn't get knocked over. So now they're all laying like this, but those shoots need to go up. So you're going to get your auxin collecting here and they're going to turn right back up. And you get this whole forest of these fun little J-shaped trees. I think they're really cool. I'd like to see that, So auxins migrate to the lower sides of these horizontal shoots and stems, and then horizontal stems, and the migration causes the stem to bend upright. Somebody probably took this little pine sapling when it was small and bent it over, and it decided, no, thank you, I would like to keep growing up. And it did. Have you ever seen what they call an Indian tree or a marker? There is one on Sawney Mountain that you can find. But it is some Native American tribes used bending trees to mark their trails and their routes. So you would take a tree that's so big around or whatever, and you would break it and leave it snapped at a right angle or whatever, and it would take itself back up. So you have this sort of like almost like a sideways Z shaped tree. Yeah,
it might have been.
Sometimes that just happens. Something naturally breaks the tree, but sometimes they've been broken by people, and that can be a sign that it was actually done. It was a Native American thing, like they did it as a trail marker. It's really kind of cool when you see them. So horizontal roots, however, the migration causes roots to bend downward, which we saw in our lab, such as it was. So now we talk about thermotropism, and this is movement of an organism or a part of an organism in response to heat or changes from the environment's temperature. So a common example is rhododendron leaves will curl in the cold. So if it gets too cold, you'll notice little rhododendron leaves will just kind of curl up. And there may be some other examples, but that's the one you're likely to see walking around Georgia.
When we went to Stone Mountain, the park ranger that we went on a hike with said that usually they can tell how bad the winter is going to be by how much the rhododendron leaves curl up.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So hydrotropism, obviously roots need to find water, right? And that's usually where you see this. So survival of terrestrial plants depends on the capacity of roots to obtain water and nutrients from the soil. So directed growth of roots in relation to a gradient in moisture is going to be called your hydrotropism. A great example are mangroves. Have you seen these? Grow along the sides of waterways in more tropical climates, but those little roots will just reach. And I think these are called walking trees. I think that's what they're called.
They're scared.
They look like they're going to get up and run away. Like, out of here. So, yeah, but that's weird. Like those roots kind of come up and then go down. And it looks like there's more like a taproot towards the center. And then they kind of grow out. But they're trying to find water, and that's the way they're finding water. So if your roots are going to grow in the direction of your water. So if you were down closer to the river, if you could like take an image and see through the soil, you could imagine that a lot of those roots are going to be headed kind of closer to the river where the soil is going to be more moist. And that's going to happen pretty much anywhere. Wherever you're getting the most water is where they're going to go. Now, chemotropism is growth of a plant due to a chemical stimulus. So it's a form of a tropism where the plant organs, I think that should say, grows in response to a chemical stimulus. According to botanists, plants can display both negative and positive chemotropisms. So your best example of this is that pollen tube we talked about, right? This little pollen grain is going to land up here, and there's a chemical signal that says, hey, the ovules down there, start boring. And that's a chemical signal that it is responding to. And then it's going to use a chemical process to kind of bore its way through, right? And then roots can also grow towards useful nutrients. If the soil is more nutritious in one area, then the roots will kind of head that direction. This one's my favorite, thigmotropism. I love this. So some plants respond to touch. That's your number one example. You ever seen that? You ever seen a vine just circling around something? You ever wondered how in the world it does that? Same kind of, think about the auxins turning towards the light, helping the plant turn towards the light. What do you suppose is happening here? How does this work? If the auxins are going to help a plant lean toward the light by collecting in the shaded part of the plant, what are the auxins doing here? What do you think? Collecting on the outside. Yeah. So that the inside has smaller, less elongated cells. Those on the outside are going to elongate, and it's going to cause it to bend, and then it will wrap around and around and around and around. Now, interestingly, that outside is also the part that's getting the light. So that plant is programmed differently necessarily than a plant that's going to bend to the light in the same way, right? Think about that. It's the same process, but you're getting a different result. And it's like, are we collecting on the shaded side? Are we collecting on the bright side? Is this side? This time it's collecting on the bright side because the bright side's not touching. But that's what makes that plant wind around. So vines and climbing plants exhibit thigmotropism when they encounter an object and wrap around it. This is also where you get a thigmotropism and a chemotropism combined. Is kind of like ivy going up a brick wall. It says, I'm touching the wall here, grow those little root hair things so I can attach to the wall and keep going. So obviously there's some chemical communication that goes on there that allows that plant to then grow those new little parts so that it can attach to the brick. Other plants, such as grapevines, have extra growths called tendrils that emerge near the base of the leaf and wrap tightly around any object they encounter. You've seen that on a grapevine, right? It's like a little corkscrew. A mimosa plant, everybody knows what those are, right? They're technically weeds, but because they're invasive, but they're really pretty. There are those guys you see in the spring that have the pink flowers look like powder puffs, like poof, right? They're all along the highways and stuff because they just kind of take over. And their leaves, if you touch them, their leaves are like they're parallel. They go up the little stalks like this, right? And they're out like that. And if you come by and you stroke it, they'll go and they all fold in. So try it when you see one this spring. If you see a mimosa, go up to it and just stroke the leaf, and you can watch it in real time. They just whoop, they move. That's one of my favorites. And that is because that thigmotropism signals the plant to decrease your osmotic pressure in the cells at the base of the leaf. So now there's less water pressure and they fold in.
Is Venus flytrap closing when it
Yes. Same thing. And there they are. Perfect timing. So carnivorous Venus flytrap also demonstrates a rapid response. When an insect lands on a flytrap's leaf, it triggers sensory cells on the inside of the leaf, sending electrical signals from cell to cell. A combination of changes in its osmotic pressure and cell wall expansion cause the leaf to snap shut, which traps the insect inside. Think about that. Osmotic pressure and cell wall expansion. You ever seen a Venus flytrap close? It's pretty quick. So you have water moving in and out of those cells, which is decreasing your osmotic pressure, and your cell walls at the same time are expanding so fast and so rapidly that the plant goes snap. Doesn't work like mussels work. It's a completely different process, and it works that fast in certain plants like these guys.
It also loves meat.
Yeah. And you can do it with your finger. You can go up and brush the inside of them. There are little hairs in there. And if you brush it, it'll close on your finger. It can't hurt you, but it's really cool to see. And when they catch bugs, it's pretty awesome because they attract bugs inside that little opening they've got like sweet stuff and the bugs are like, ooh, this looks like lunch. And then they're like, no, your lunch. And then it's over, over. All right, so this is a summary of all of our tropisms that we just talked about with some good, maybe. Hello. Oh, that's fun. What in the world just happened? Hello. Oh, that is bizarre. You gotta love technology, right? Like it's the absolute best. Okay, go back. Okay. Okay. Oh, it's like it's frozen. All right, I'll come. Oh, there. Oh, oh, oh. What? Did you see it?
Yeah.
It's not just me.
It does that whenever you like close out of a tab, it instantly loads.
Yeah, I know, but it shouldn't. Okay, hold on. Let's try it there. There it is. Maybe. Oh, okay. Now we're gonna play. All right, whatever. That's bizarre, but all
Types
right.
of tropism in plants. The term tropism refers to a plant biological ability to move by itself in response to various forms of external stimuli. Types of tropism in plants: phototropism, geotropism, hydrotropism, thigmotropism, and chemotropism. Phototropism: the movements shown by plants with respect to stimuli of light is called phototropism. The shoot
See a little
is
hook?
positively phototropic, and so it grows in the direction of light. Shoots show positive phototropism but negative geotropism. Geotropism: the movement shown by plants with respect to stimuli of gravity is called geotropism. Roots are positively geotropic. Roots show positive geotropism, positive hydrotropism. Hydrotropism: the movement shown by plants with respect to stimuli of water is called hydrotropism. Thigmotropism: the movements shown by plants with respect to stimuli of touch is called thigmotropism.
Look at that. Ooh. Mhm. It does. It's really cool.
Chemotropism: the movements shown by plants with respect to stimuli of chemicals is called chemotropism. Nastic movement:
So this is your type of
nastic movements
thigmotropism.
are non-directional.
That's your mimosa.
Stimuli. It is not like tropism.
But it is kind of.
The Tasmanor plant, or Mimosa pudica, is a herb whose leaves go limp and droop when we touch, but reopens later.
Why did it do that?
I don't know.
Photonastic
It's really
movement.
cool. It's probably trying to protect itself from getting eaten or something. It's really neat.
Refers to the movement in response to light.
So really cool, right? You could actually see the mimosa close up. You can watch them do that. I highly encourage you find one this spring and try it. It's actually really fun. So how do plants respond to seasonal changes? There's a photoperiod, which is a major factor in the timing of seasonal activities such as flowering and growth. Many plants respond to the relative lengths of light and darkness, a stimulus called photoperiod. Photoperiod is a major factor in the timing of seasonal activities. Your plants don't want to start blooming at the wrong time, do they? Because then your little fruits are going to freeze, or they won't grow to get transported by animals. Sometimes we have a problem where we'll get like that, oh, what's it called, full spring or whatever it is, where it's like February and it's in the 70s for a couple days, and our plants will get real confused and they'll start to make buds and things like that. And then we have another ice storm and then they all freeze off, and then you don't get any good growth that year. You've seen that happen, I'm sure. Yep. And then, so when you get cold weather, deciduous plants turn off their photosynthetic pathways and transport materials from the leaves to the roots, and that seals off the leaf, and that's why our leaves come down in the autumn, because it's recognizing that the weather is cold enough. This is also why your trees are going to start turning color in the north earlier than they are down in the south, because it's a little warmer longer here than it is up there. It starts to get cold sooner up there. And a plant pigment is called a photochrome, and it's responsible for your phototropism. Phytochrome, absorbs red light and activates, and I can't read, a number of signaling pathways within the plant. Plants respond to regular changes in those pathways. So how do plants respond to seasonal changes? Dormancy. Phytochrome also regulates the changes in activity that prepare many plants for dormancy as the winter approaches. So we talked about seed dormancy before, and we mentioned like hydrangeas and stuff are a good example of plant dormancy. A lot of plants go dormant to the point where you don't see any of the plant anymore. It's basically just the root ball that's alive. You don't see anything really above the surface at all. It just goes all the way down to the ground and then it pops back up, like bulbs, for example. I have daffodils out in the yard right now that got very cold over the weekend. But that bulb remains there all winter when it's really cold. And then they wake up, they go through their dormant period, and then they kind of wake up, right? So as cold weather approaches, deciduous plants are going to turn off their pathways, like we said before, seal off the leaves, and the leaves are going to fall. Many flowering plants are going to lose their leaves during the colder months, and the phytochrome in leaves absorbs less light as the days shorten, the nights become longer, and then auxin production drops and the production of ethylene increases, and then that's why all these parts fall off. As chlorophyll breaks down, other pigments, including yellow and orange carotenoids, become visible for the first time. So remember when we did the different colored leaves to see whether there was still chlorophyll in them, and there was still green pigment, even in like the red leaves? The reason that the leaves look a different color in the fall, if you remember, is because that chlorophyll gets broken down, and then the other pigments that were always there now become visible. They're always there, but they're covered by the green until the green breaks down. So brilliant reds come from anthocyanin, and these are pigments that are freshly made. So it can make some pigments kind of in the end to give you these real bright ones. So changes to meristems. Hormones produce changes in apical meristems. Remember, that is the tippy tip end of a twig or a shoot is your apical meristem. And meristems produce thick waxy scales that form a protective layer around buds. Enclosed in this coat of scales, a terminal bud can survive cold winter days. You ever seen buds on the ends of twigs or poking off of twigs that are there all winter long? Just a little bud just sits there, nothing happens. Same kind of deal. At the onset of winter, xylem and phloem tissues pump themselves full of ions and organic compounds, and the resulting solution acts as antifreeze in a car. It's the same sort of thing. It prevents the tree's sap from freezing. That's how you get your maple syrup. Now, did anybody see any of the videos in the last couple weeks of the exploding trees? Ever see that? No, it's real. So it's a thing. If it gets cold enough, like really, really, really cold, you remember trees are full of water. What happens to water when it freezes? It expands, right? So we have stuff going on. We have a solution that's like antifreeze that should keep that from happening. But sometimes it gets so cold that it's going to overcome this process. And you can have trees that are just sort of sitting in the forest and then go boom, and then just kind of fall apart. Like I saw a video of a guy in the snow last week up in like Minnesota or somewhere up there where it's real cold. And he was He was filming something completely different, and behind him, a tree exploded. He's like, I cannot believe I caught that. But it was loud. It sounded like a cannon. Like it just, pieces of it just went everywhere. All right, so let's talk about plants and humans for a bit, and we'll wrap this up. Plants and humans, which crops are a major food supply for humans? What do you think are our biggest food supply crops for humans? Give me one. Grain specifically. Wheat, okay. Rice, go here.
I'll say wheat.
Okay. Corn, wheat, rice, corn.
Or what it was called, but they grow it in Montana. Big fields of it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Soybeans?
Soy, there you go. All right. Wheat, rice, corn, soy. These are the big ones. Oh, whatever. These are the big ones. These are the ones that we grow the most of. So wheat, rice, corn, soybeans. This is the bulk of our food supply for all the humans on the planet. So many scholars trace the beginnings of human civilization to the cultivation of crops and plants. So remember way back in the day, while we were like little tribal nomadic type people, or we were, kind of moving from place to place, we were moving because we didn't have any agriculture. We just went where the food was instead of bringing the food to us. Typically, a lot of those societies were structured so that your males and your boys did your hunting, and your women and your children did your gathering, went around and picked berries, whatever it was you were eating, acorns, whatever. Yum, delicious. Ever tasted an acorn? So bitter, right? I saw a National Geographic thing when I was a kid where some lady crushed acorns and made like an acorn soup. It looked like a butternut soup or something, like a butternut squash soup. It looked delicious. I thought I'll go try one of those, and I bit into an acorn and I was like, whoa, so bitter. Uh-huh.
Darren and I took this Bible class, and I don't think we actually ever got there, but at some point he was going to show us how many acorn pancakes.
Yeah, people eat them. Yeah.
You can leash them.
That's the trick. Yeah. You have to like soak them and pull. Is it tannins? I think it's, yeah, you got to pull certain compounds out of them or they're very bitter. Yeah. I didn't know that. I just bit them and thought, oh, how is anybody eating this? So once people discovered how to grow plants for food, the planting and harvesting of crops tended to keep them in one place for much of a year, leading directly to your establishment of social institutions. So thousands of different plants, nearly all angiosperms, are raised for food in various parts of the world. And the food we eat from most crop plants is taken from their seeds for nutrition. For most of humanity worldwide depends on the endosperm of only a few cultivated species of grass. That's wheat and rice, are types of grass. So roughly 80% of all U.S. cropland is used to grow just 4 crops: wheat, corn, soybeans, and hay. The hay is for feeding our livestock, right? And of these crops, 3, wheat, corn, and hay, are derived from grasses. So the efficiency of agriculture has been improved, obviously. Selective breeding. Now, selective breeding, we're not talking just like in the last 50 years where we've really gotten good at selective breeding. We're talking about way back. So has anybody ever been out in the woods and seen like a wild tomato? Nope. And if you did, you probably wouldn't recognize it. How about corn? You ever seen wild corn?
It's like tiny.
It looks like that. That's corn before it's corn. That's what we started with. And it was primarily Native Americans that cultivated that using selective breeding so that we got the corn we know today. It's weird if you think about it, a lot of the food you eat, you've probably never seen it in the wild because we've cultivated it into something we can use. And the wild growing version of it is not even recognizable to us.
Do you think like 100, 200 years from now it'll than it does now?
I don't know. So one thing we're going to see in a minute is Brussels sprouts. And the Brussels sprouts my grandparents ate are not the Brussels sprouts we eat. They've changed them entirely. They're less bitter now. That's why they're on every menu. Everywhere. Yeah, but you wouldn't have loved them 50 years ago. Very few people ate them. Uh-huh.
I was on a hike once, and it was like with a homeschool group, and I was trailing behind.
Uh-huh.
And this kid came up to me and he was like, "Look, wild onion."
Oh yeah.
The whole thing in his mouth, ate it, and then was like, "Smell my breath."
Oh, I don't like that part.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You ever seen the wild onion? It grows everywhere. It grows in your yard, probably.
Sure.
Yeah. The onion on it is tiny on the end. Uh-huh. I think those wild onions can be treated similar to scallions or chives. Like you can put them on your baked potatoes or whatever, just the green parts, right? But it took 8,000 years to get us the corn we know today because it started like that, which is really wild. And it can be very dramatic, obviously. This doesn't look anything like this, but this is what 8,000 years of selective breeding will do. So more recent and other familiar crops have been the product of selective breeding. Obviously, all of our fruits and things like that. Sugar beets. You can straight up eat these. They're delicious, but you can also use them for sugar. If you've ever seen any kind of culinary sugar work, like the sugar art, they use isomalt for that. I have tons of it. I use it all the time for stuff. Isomalt is not cane sugar. It doesn't come from sugar cane. It comes from beets because you can work it at a much higher temperature before it caramelizes. It stays nice and clear. It's pretty cool. And then there's your Brussels sprouts. So that's how they grow, if you've ever wondered. You ever seen them? I've seen them once when I drove through California. I saw a Brussels sprout farm and I was like, whoa. You see them and they're in like a little box or a little bag or a little cart. And they don't look anything like that, but that's how they grow off the stalk of this colored cabbagey like looking plant. And so cabbage, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts were all developed from a single wild mustard. Yeah. Isabella just gave me a look like you're kidding me, right? No. Yeah, that's where they come from. So we've developed all these different types of vegetables that we eat from one ancestral plant. So obviously we've improved our farming techniques. What's that thing? Combine. Yep.
My grandparents who live in Kansas have a farm that they use a combine on, and when we were there during summer during COVID, we got to watch it harvest the fields.
That's really cool. Those things are very cool. So we've gotten better at that. We've got better techniques for fertilizers and pesticides. We've learned to label our stuff appropriately. And hopefully we don't end up with this situation. Remember when we did this lab, we would put high nitrogen fertilizer in with our chlorella vulgaris and it like grew like crazy. So we've gotten better at that kind of thing. We've also gotten better at some of our pesticides, and some of our plants now are genetically modified so that they are unattractive to pests and our pests do not want to eat them, which is really great actually, because then you don't have to put pesticide on them, you know? It's a different option and a different way of looking at solving the same problem we've always had. So we also use them for fiber, for wood, for medicine. So aloe, you know, has been in many lotions or whatever. You can put on a burn. You can eat it as well. It makes a good laxative if you eat the right amount, actually. It's one of those things people will use it for that purpose. CVS has these little drinks. I love them, but there's little drinks and it's water with aloe in it, but it has chunks of aloe in it. It's actually really good. No, it's really good. And you get these little like bits of aloe in it that you can kind of chew as you go. We've used spruce to make instruments. We use cotton to make clothes, obviously, right? And we use hemp too. So let's see. Here are some answers to some of your stuff. If you want to check them, we'll just kind of look through them real slowly here. Well, here's our first page of answers. I'll give y'all a, so for this, I'll read them so you can check if you want to check. So for structure of flowers, questions 1 through 10, it's B, F, E, C, I, G, D, H, J, A. And then obviously you have your diagram, which should look awfully familiar. There it is again. Then for 12 through 15, you've got sporophyte, haploid, gametophyte, and ovule. 16 through 20, your answer should be stigma, true, and ovule. 21, what is vegetative reproduction? It's the production of offspring from one parent plant that results in mitotic division cell in non-reproductive parts. 22, give an advantage and a disadvantage of vegetative reproduction. We talked about that. Obviously, your new offspring are going to be genetically identical. That could be bad if the environment changes. It's good if the environment stays the same. Reproductive method, vegetative parts involved. Stolons are above ground stems, like strawberries. Tubers are underground stems, like potatoes. And grafts are stem pieces or buds, like lemon bud grafted onto an orange tree. You ever seen those trees that grow lemons, limes, and oranges because they've grafted it together? You can also get a tree that grows golden delicious, red delicious, and Granny Smith because they have grafted those together.
What do you mean grafted?
So they'll take it, they'll cut it in the correct place where you've got the right meristem involved, and they will like skin the bark off one piece of the tree, and they'll slap that fresh cut from the other. Like say this one's Granny Smith and this one's Red Delicious. They'll slap it on, give it some nice chemical that helps it grow, tape it up, seal it up, and it'll just start growing right off of the plant.
Isn't that how you can like combine different fruits, make like
you can in some ways. Yeah, and some of the plants that, I mean, vegetables and fruits and things that you eat are all come from grafts. Like they don't plant apple seeds. Those are all like grafted saplings and things. So how long would a period of rainy weather affect reproduction? Long period of rainy weather may prevent wind-pollinated plants from being pollinated. If pollen floats on the water, though, it would be good. Let's see. 1 through 6 are protect, nutrients, ovary, spreading or dispersal, fruits, shell, and seed. 7 through 11 are B, D, A, C, C. Here's your little graphic. And then 13 through 15 are true, sheath, true. I'll let you guys you can go back and look at these if you want to check, because I think probably what you really want to get to is this. Yes, hurry. Remember to read ahead as to what your lab is. If you don't like it and you don't want to do it, go to the assignment in Teacheries, download what you need.
okay.
Everything.
I'll put anything down. You want to put them there? Thank you, ma'am. Study hard, do well.
My other.
Oh, I said bunker. I didn't surprise by anything.
You know, some people like, that's their thing. They don't wear them. I had an uncle like that. And when he died, he was cremated, but he told us all beforehand, don't you put underpants on me to cremate me because I want to go out the way I always was. It was kind of funny. And we did it. And he wore jeans. And I'm like, dude.